to put all of your wood behind one arrow to cut through the noise. It's got to be something that's defensible that nobody else can lay claim to.
The way you talk, the way you speak, and the way you love your city is what's going to make the largest impact across our state.
You can do extraordinary things here, not just good things here, and be remarkably successful.
If every resident of Indianapolis could do one thing to make our city better, what would that be? From South Bend to Evansville and everywhere in between, this is Get In, the show focused on the Hoosier State and the incredible stories happening here today. I'm Nate Spengel, founder of Get Indiana, and I will be your host for today's conversation. Before we dive into today's episode, a quick shout out to our friends at NCW, the team that's been building one of the fastest growing staffing and recruiting companies in America for over 25 years. They specialize in the skilled trades, but here's the thing, they're also growing their own internal team. If you or someone you know is interested in recruiting, sales, or just making businesses run smoother, you'll want to check them out at teamncw.com. This is just another job pitch. NCW has been voted a top workplace by the Indy Star, landed on the IBJ Fast 25 list, and made the Inc. 5000 list multiple times. I'll tell you, I've got plenty of friends who work there, and they all love it. Go check out teamncw.com. Now let's get into the episode. My guest today is Kristian Andersen, the co-founder and partner of High Alpha, a venture studio based right here in Indianapolis that conceives, launches, and scales enterprise software companies. They also do tons of investments all across the country. These guys know software when it comes to, and are leading the charge here in Indiana. Before High Alpha, he founded the design and innovation agency Studio Science and co-founded software/venture firms, including Visible.vc, Lessonly, and Gravity Ventures. He is deeply, deeply, deeply connected to Indiana. He's invested in building startup ecosystems in Indianapolis and works to attract, retain, and grow talent all across the state of Indiana. I am really excited for this one. We're going to have a ton of fun talking all things Indiana, how we market ourselves, how we compare and contrast versus our national competitors. We might even throw some buck hunting in there. Who knows where the conversation is going to go. Kristian, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
What I do want to start with is, we're just going to dive right into it.
Let's go.
You're not originally from Indiana, correct?
No, I am an adopted son of the Hoosier State.
The Hoosier by choice, right?
That's right.
Okay, so where is birth, home? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in New York. My dad and mom actually met in Alaska when my dad was in the service and my mom was teaching school up there. And they met and fell in love and got married and started their life in New York, which was where my dad was from. But when we were 5, and my dad had built an amazing business there, but my mom grew up in Arkansas in a very rural context, and I think they wanted to raise the kids in that context. So when I was 5, we moved to Arkansas, and I like to think that I've borrowed kind of the best of both of those worlds. My wife Brandy said I pitched myself as half country and half city. And she found that quite interesting and attractive. But once we got married, she realized I was 95% country and only 5% city. So she feels like she
Do you feel like,
got duped.
Well, I mean, obviously an extensive career in tech, entrepreneurship, software. Do you feel like having 95% country has been helpful as you walk into, I'm sure, board meetings and this, that, like these crazy meetings where everyone's buttoned up suits, big Silicon Valley money, and you walk in there, this guy from Arkansas, that was raised in Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way it's kind of calling the bluff of the kind of tech intelligentsia a little bit, who are so, at least on the surface, enamored with the idea of diversity. I think there's a kind of psychographic and ideological lack of diversity in tech as a general rule. And I would say that urban centers are grotesquely overrepresented in those rooms. So it's been an advantage in that, I do think I bring a slightly divergent experiences and context. And I also think it, to some extent, it kind of keeps people guessing. I mean, I did not grow up in the Bay Area. I did not go to Stanford. I don't own any wingtip shoes. Part of it is, I think you show up differently, at least from a veneer perspective. But I think more importantly, it's just another kind of diverse node in those discussions.
Was it ever limiting for you? Like as you were trying to advance this career in tech and entrepreneurship, and they're like, oh boy, the hillbilly from Arkansas is coming into town.
My mom taught me how to throw a knuckleball and shoot a gun. And, my dad taught me kind of the language of the high arts and how to navigate a 16-piece place setting, right? So I was able to kind of bring those, and I don't want to, I'm being a little campy when I say that. But no, I never thought my Arkansas roots were an impediment.
How did you end up coming from Arkansas to Indiana?
I went to college at Andersen University.
What? How did, out of everywhere you could have gone all across the country, why did Andersen University call your name?
This is a long, today I have 6 kids and 2 of them are in college and each one of them applied to lots of colleges. When I was a kid, you didn't do that. You didn't apply to 24 schools. There was no Common App. So I applied to 3 schools. One was in state in Arkansas, and I knew I kind of wanted to go somewhere else. One was Andersen that I became familiar with through a family friend. Didn't know anything about it.
It was like, yeah, come to Indiana.
Yeah. And then one was Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and I did not get accepted to Carnegie Mellon. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to Andersen, and literally loaded the truck up and drove to Andersen, Indiana.
Had you been to the state of Indiana before?
Yeah, I had been to the state of Indiana. I had visited the university once, kind of on my truncated college tour. It's funny, I remember I was very sick. I had a really bad cold, and I was like loaded up on like Actifed, and so I have very foggy memories of my campus tour. I do know that they arranged for me to meet with at the time the president, and I fell asleep during that brief interaction because I was so loaded
with
up.
the president.
Yeah.
You're talking to the president
and I just straight up nodded off. Yeah. So obviously amazing first impression, but they let me in anyway, and that's what brought me to Indiana, and was the beginning of my love affair with this city and this state.
When you start to go away, how far is Arkansas? How far was home from Indiana, from Andersen?
Oh, it's like 700 miles.
Wow. You're 700 miles away from home. Mm-hmm. What were the things about Indiana that made you feel at home? And what were the things that made you feel 700 plus miles apart?
It did feel very different to me. In a way, it was exotic,
Indiana, the exotic.
I know. Isn't that funny? I loved my time at Andersen University. I remain a staunch supporter of that university and its mission. I also have a soft spot for the city of Andersen. But the city of Andersen's, it's been tough sledding for that community, and it was tough sledding when I showed up in 1992.
You're there in 1992. Was it GM that left town? There was something big, maybe Dell or something. There was some big businesses that left.
It was the GM orbit. So there were a number of. It might have been Delco Remy at the time, but there were, it was a big manufacturing industrial town, and it was booming in the 60s and 70s, but by the 80s, and the fact checkers can see if I've got this straight or not, but I think at one point in the late 80s, Andersen had the highest unemployment rate in the country.
No way.
So, when I rolled up, it was kind of gray skies, and you're driving past these derelict factories that are churning soot into the atmosphere, and it was not, as I'd mentioned, I'd grown up in a place that was really aesthetically beautiful, whatever your preconceived notions about Arkansas might be. It's a beautiful place. And so the first thing that kind of hit me was there was almost a dash of dystopia in it.
Yeah.
And that took me, it took me a couple weeks to get my bearings.
So 74, Andersen's 20 GM plants claimed 25,000 workers. And by the time they started moving manufacturing to Mexico, China, India, and Brazil, layoffs during the 80s and 90s. And that's, what led to that, that dystopian feel.
Well, it was just a single-threaded market. And, I think the same things that are true for us as individuals are true for cities, states, and nations, right? And, when you are single-threaded, you're at risk. And if your economy is single-threaded, you're at risk. And when the going's good, I mean, talk to the folks that live in West Texas, right? In Midland and Odessa, when a barrel of oil is $140, life is good.
Yeah.
When a barrel of oil is $40, life is not good.
Yeah.
And that wasn't unique to Indiana. It's not even unique to the Midwest. I mean, you've seen the same dynamic play out in the southeastern United States, in the Southwest, in the industrialized upper Midwest. You have these single-threaded economies, and when the world changes, it changes fast.
I mean, look at Elkhart County.
Yeah.
When people are buying RVs and travel, when everyone's like not allowed to be in public spaces together and you have to go and get off the grid, Elkhart booms, baby. Yeah. When things are going down and people are like, oh, you know what? I don't need a new RV this year, or I can buy a used one or whatever. Like, then the economy suffers up there. Very, very interesting. So you spend 4 years in Andersen.
Yep.
Did you grow up wanting to work in tech?
I would say by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I basically knew what I wanted to do for a living. Now, I had unsophisticated language to articulate it. I would have said, when I was 8 or 9, I probably would have said, I want to be in advertising.
Oh.
You know, for Christmas, I asked for drafting boards and airbrushes and markers and things like that. And my folks really indulged that. They got me a Apple Macintosh 2 when I was 12 years old. And that really kind of changed my life. I became, fluent in the language of technology, at least personal computing. And as I grew, that language shifted more toward design. I was always like a creative person and a very curious person. And design, kind of with a capital D, was a interesting road to allow me to indulge all of my curiosities.
I mean, this is the late 80s. When you said design, by the time you were thinking about going to college, like, did people think like clothing, like that kind of design?
Back then, they would have called it like commercial design or graphic design, but it was making things.
Yeah.
And predominantly on the two-dimensional plane, rather that be on paper or on a computer. But I was always interested in the ideas around branding and packaging. And, my folks never wanted me to go to the grocery store with them because I would linger for an hour on the aisle studying the packaging of the cereal box or the Coke can.
Was there a design you made on that Apple Macintosh 2, like one of those first projects that you made that you still look back on like, I'm so proud of that thing?
There is. And by the way, for those listening, this was not a planted question. So it's funny that you asked that and that I have a quick answer for it. But there was a restaurant in my hometown of Conway, Arkansas called Stobie's, and kind of a famous restaurant. It's still kind of famous. And I think they claim to have invented cheese dip. So it's unclear to me if this is true or not.
Stobie's?
Yes, Stobie's. And they ran a T-shirt design contest, and the winner got free food for a year. And I entered the T-shirt design contest. I won it. There was no contract. It was kind of a verbal deal, like, hey, free food for a year. Much to their chagrin, they should have documented this. And so basically every day, probably 350 days out of the year, I went to Stobie's, and I would bring friends and girlfriends and, 2 meals a day. And I'd be like, that T-shirt hanging on the wall, I designed that. I get all the food I want. And at one point, the proprietor came up to the booth and was like, Kristian, listen, really grateful for the T-shirt design. People love it, but you're gonna put us out of business, right? It's one meal from this point forward. It's 1 meal a week, okay, buddy? And I was like, okay. I felt like I had already gotten,
You about put your
10x the value, so I was happy to acquiesce and agree to that.
You about put your local restaurant out of business.
But that was probably the first time I realized, hey, you can make money doing this. And I started a T-shirt design company in high school. And I was always entrepreneurial, always starting little businesses, even in elementary school. But the T-shirt design business was when I realized, hey, I don't have to work for somebody, and I can make real money. And I did that through high school. I did that through college. That was my walking around money for 8 years.
Yeah. Okay. So you had side hustles. You had done entrepreneurial things. Obviously, win the T-shirt design contest. And I mean, for date night, that's not so bad as a high school kid. Yeah. Come on. You end up moving to Indiana. You go to Andersen, and design is the path that you end up wanting to go. And so you graduate. What does someone wanting to pursue a career in design, what do you go look? Is it like go to Madison Avenue and try to get into advertising and that kind of thing? Where do you end up?
Yeah, so I took a job right out of school with, this was 1996, and there was a tech startup called Intermark. And they hired me to be a UI designer, which I knew nothing about, but I knew how to use graphic, applications. And so, in the land of the blind, the man with one eye leads, as they say. And I did that job for about 6 months until that company went out of business.
Oh.
And my boss at the time encouraged me to hang out my own shingle. He was like, you're talented, you're good. There was no severance. The severance was the graphic workstation I had been using. And he said, here's your severance. And that ended up being fortuitous. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a freelance designer. And I moved to Broad Ripple, and I rented a 200 square foot office above where the Starbucks used to be on the corner of Broad Ripple Avenue.
So now the Thieves?
Yeah,
that bar? Yeah.
So upstairs was this little lopsided, like if you dropped a pencil, it would race across the floor. It was like this crooked floor, tiny little office. And I was just a glorified freelancer. But I'll tell you.
And this is the late 90s. Freelancing.
It's probably 97.
Today it's commonplace. Yeah. In 97, not.
I would say probably less common. I'd say my folks were probably a little concerned that I didn't have a real job.
What is our son doing up in Indiana? No job, like in Broad Ripple in his slanted little office.
But things started ripping, and me being an independent freelancer turned into me running a network of freelancers, and then I hired my first team member, and then things just kind of took off. And I ended up selling that company maybe 2018 or 2019 to a private equity-backed group of investors. It's still rocking and rolling. It's called Studio Science, and they're doing great.
Was it called Studio Science when you started?
No, it was called Kristian Andersen Plus Associates, which, by the way, this is the free advice section of the podcast. My dad's given me a lot of good advice in my life, more good advice than bad advice. But one piece of bad advice he gave me was name the company after yourself. He called it eponymous naming. And I think that's probably fine. If your ego needs it, it's probably fine as long as you're involved in the business. But when it comes time to sell that company and you're no longer there, it can be problematic. It can be problematic when you scale and you're not the person in the room with the client. They're like, well, hold on, where's this Kristian Andersen guy whose name's on the business card? So when it became clear to me that might be an impediment to scaling, we rebranded the company.
It's like we paid for Kristian Andersen, and all we got was Plus Associates.
Yeah, exactly. But while running that company, it was good timing. Indianapolis in the late 90s and early 2000s was... no one had figured out at that point that you've got to be in San Francisco to build a tech company. And if you look at Aprimo and ExactTarget and Angie's List and all these companies that emerged in the early 2000s, they all became customers. And so as they grew to become, in many cases, multi-billion-dollar companies, we were allowed to go along for that ride, which was pretty amazing. And while basically operating a consulting firm, we starting companies out of the studio, and some of those companies turned into real companies, as they say.
So one, as you were working on these are the iconic brands of, I would say, the late 90s, early 2000s in Indiana, the ExactTargets, the Angie's List, Aprimo, all of those. So you were doing design and brand work with them?
Yeah.
Which brand was your favorite to work on?
Oh, I won't answer the question that way, but what I will share, before you hit record on this, you had mentioned that you were in Greenfield, Indiana with Chris Baggett.
Yeah.
Every few years I'll email Chris and I'll remind him of this, just because I just feel a lot of gratitude toward him. And, his business partner, Scott, is now my partner at High Alpha. And I think without Chris kind of taking a shot on me, I walked in, ExactTarget was doing a website redesign, and this is when they were like turning into a real company. And they had some real agencies in there pitching this. And I was in a room with Chris and his team. I think at the time Chris may have been running marketing for them. and did my little spiel and left. And he called me a week later and he said, "You've got the job." And he said, "I want to tell you, we've got a little scorecard for how we're rating the agencies." And he's like, "Your scorecard was just amazing. High on cultural fit, high on kind of strategy, and very low on price," meaning I thought there was no way we were going to get the project, so we just kind of wrote a number in, having no idea if we were going to be high or low. And Chris was like, "You were actually the most expensive of everyone we interviewed." And he goes, "That's a good combination. Like when you're a great fit across all these dimensions and you're expensive." And I don't know if he was pulling my leg or not, but they hired us, and that was really important. That was really catalytic for us, and that led to a lot of other really important opportunities for us down the road.
Yeah, I mean, today the work that you're doing with High Alpha, kind of like, I think that everyone thinks that everyone that was involved in ExactTarget is now involved in High Alpha, and it's like it kind of just all blends together, like, oh yeah, those guys that did that thing that like 1 out of every 3 people in Indianapolis, especially the tech community, worked for. It's like, oh yeah, like I feel like especially as I started like meet new people, they're like, "Oh yeah, where were you from 2008 to 2011?" They're like, "Oh, I was at ExactTarget."
The most powerful economic development force on the planet are really successful for-profit enterprises. And that's not to besmirch all the nonprofit economic development organizations, because they're vital and play really important roles. But if you really want to transform a community, you want to transform families, you want to transform as an individual, one of the most important kind of crucibles for that are really successful kind of hyperscale businesses. And if you look at the impact that ExactTarget had on Indianapolis for well over a decade, it kind of can't be overstated, not just because it shone a light on Indy or it confirmed the hunch that breakout businesses can be built anywhere. I think it taught hundreds, if not thousands of people about the power of entrepreneurship and really emboldened those folks to go do their own thing.
Chris told me this story yesterday. Crazy. He said when they needed to raise their first $200,000, he went door to door through his neighborhood getting $5,000 checks. Yeah. And each one of those $5,000 checks turned into over $1 million. Like, so his neighbors, friends, people that he just like, that trusted him, that saw him working on this at the time, like software, computer, the computer guy down the street, $5,000 investment turns into $1 million.
It changed people's lives, but not only because of the financial windfall it created, which just in and of itself is incredible. I mean, that's huge. Pay off the mortgage, send the kids to college, et cetera. But the way those dollars then get recycled into the next generation of founders and entrepreneurs, the impact it had on the second and third concentric rings. So think about the attorneys and the PR professionals.
The design firms.
And the design firms and the folks building affordable housing in downtown. The ripple, it's really hard to measure the kind of pure economic impact of that, but it was big.
Yeah. And how do you feel like, so you came to Indiana in the early 90s? Yeah. You moved to Indy in 97, and then the next decade, over a decade, ExactTarget ends up ripping. Yeah. How did Indianapolis change from the time you arrived to ExactTarget's IPO, then acquisition by Salesforce?
I think probably the most important thing that happened was the collective ambition level of the citizenry went up. So people who live in Indy, and maybe this transition to another topic, but I think the whole idea of like, hey, it's a nice place to live. You can buy a big house for less money than in Chicago, and the schools are good. And, it was a very like safe, comfortable place to live. I wouldn't say particularly high on ambition, like unilaterally. Certainly there were exceptions to that. We have some unbelievable companies based in Indianapolis, old companies that were very high on ambition.
That sell medicine to the globe, there's some big companies doing stuff.
But I would say it was not a particularly ambitious place. And there was a lot more that went into this than just the breakout success of ExactTarget and Angie's List and so forth. But it played a role in people realizing you can do extraordinary things here, not just good things here, not just comfortable things here, but you can do really hard things here and be remarkably successful at it. And I think the city found another gear over those 10 years. And I think the collective ambition of many of the leaders in the city increased. And at the end of the day, like, that's kind of what matters. The ambition level of a citizenry is so important. Their own kind of self-conception and identity around where they live is really important. You look at the cities that get a lot of press today for being kind of outsized successes, breakouts. You take your Nashville, you take your Austin. What's important to acknowledge about both those communities is the people who live there are extraordinarily proud.
They won't shut up. It's like a person who does CrossFit or is like vegan or carnivore.
Yeah.
Like they don't stop talking about it.
That's how you actually know when it's working. And, you go to Austin, you walk down 6th Street, there's a T-shirt shop, and the T-shirt hanging in the window says, "Welcome to Austin. Please don't move here." Okay? That, to me, is like a high... Now, is there maybe a little too much hubris in that particular community? Possibly. But that's how you know when it's working.
Here's a question for you.
And then let me add one more thought there.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm mildly frustrated about in Indianapolis, and I like to talk about Indianapolis as opposed to Indiana because people live in cities, they don't live in states. Okay? So
we'll agree to disagree there.
I know. And every time I talk to somebody who's thinking at the state level, that's always like problematic. But the reality is people live in cities. They don't live in it's a bit hyperbolic, but I think you kind of know where I'm going with that. What I get really frustrated about is when I'm in a room with a recent transplant, or I'm at a dinner party with a recent transplant, and somebody comes up and goes, "Why did you move here? Why did you move to Indianapolis?" It infuriates me. The idea of there being like some skepticism about, well, did you marry somebody from here or did you just come for the job, as opposed to that frame of like, well, of course what took you so long?
Yeah.
Like what took you so long?
And or similar, it's like, oh, it's pretty good for Indiana. Like for Indiana at the end of whatever, like, oh yeah, St. Elmo's Steakhouse is pretty good for Indiana. I'm like, it's just pretty good. Like it's just good in general.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be, okay, so I have a whole theory and I would be curious to hear your perspective. So I'm a state guy. So I love, because I do think that the piece that we get is it ends up being rural Indiana versus urban Indiana and like Indy versus the rest of the state. And it's like, no, because in Indiana, like you want to go down to Brown County because there's cool stuff going on there. You want to go up to the dunes. The whole state has to be this ecosystem that works. My question would be, do you think that Austin is successful do you think Nashville is successful because of the state making this campaign, this marketing campaign that just trickled down to the people? Or what do you think changed in the people to bubble up this sense of local pride?
I think the state, not the borders of the state, but decision-making at the state level does have some impact on the cultural and economic vitality of their capital cities, okay? For sure. If you look at Nashville and Austin in particular, there's such great comparisons for Indy, right? They're both topographically undifferentiated. There are no mountains. There are no oceans, right? They don't have big global airports. In the case of Austin, they don't even have a professional sports team, right? So why have those cities grown the way they've grown? Why has net migration been as high in those communities as it's been? Well, I'd say at the state, so I'll break it into two pieces. One is like the mechanics, and one is the perception. So the mechanics of both Nashville and Austin are they're both in states that have no state income tax. Now, that may not sound like a big deal. It's a very big deal. Actually, if you look at basically all of the highest growth capital cities in the states in which they reside, no state income tax. Florida, Washington State, Tennessee, Texas. Why is that? Does it really matter? I mean, Indiana, we have a very low state income tax. Why does that matter? Well, it's basically hanging up a big neon sign to entrepreneurs saying we're open for business. And if you look at the companies that have moved to Nashville and moved to Austin in particular, many of them did so because there was no state income tax. So I do think the state, like at a governance level, and that's a big one, the income tax piece, there's lots of other stuff, can create the context for cultural and economic flourishing, but they can't do it on their own. In the case of Nashville, Nashville was really kind of a provincial backwater 25 years ago.
Provincial backwater.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, so I guess you got to start with what is Nashville today. So huge net migration, economic expansion, kind of hitting on all cylinders, kind of culturally and creatively, right? It's the country music capital of the world. It's the bachelorette capital of the world.
Pink cowboy hats, baby. Let's go.
It's a huge tourism business. But if you go back, when I was a kid growing up, Nashville was Yeehaw. You probably don't know what that is, but it was a TV show that came on, I think, Saturday nights. That was like a folksy country and western kind of variety show. And the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, it was like Dolly Parton and Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, and I don't want to speak for the fine people of Nashville, of whom I'm big fans, but there was a lot of people involved in shaping the identity of that community that wanted desperately to get away from that. This kind of rural, provincial, hick town kind of vibe. And what Nashville did, which is what I think all great cities do, is they didn't try to invent or make out of thin air a net new identity. They kind of mined the history of that community to say what is true and good and virtuous that is highly differentiated from everyone else. Because cities are businesses and their citizens are their customers. So it works very much like the marketplace, right? What's your value proposition? Who's your ICP, et cetera. And what Nashville ended up doing was saying, well, you know what? If you can't beat them, let's lean in. If this is the perception of our community, let's lean into that 110%. Fast forward 30 years, Nashville has fully embraced its kind of country chic identity. My daughter just started her freshman year of college in Nashville, right? So I'm getting like a very up close view of like, what do young people find so winsome and interesting about that community? Well, it's the very thing that the city tried to run away from 30 years ago. The honky tonks, the country music. They kind of wrapped their arms around it and said, no, nobody else has this asset. Now today, that asset may not be widely embraced, but nobody else has it. So this is our point of difference, and we're going to put basically all of our eggs in one basket. And if you think about like what really drives the commercial engine of Nashville, it's not country music, it's healthcare, right? I want to say like the vast majority of hospital beds in the country are managed out of Nashville, Tennessee, right? HCA bought a big company called Health South, and so it's like a healthcare town.
Oh.
For sure. But the message, the external message to the world is it's a great place to have a bachelor party, right?
Yeah.
You get to wear a cowboy hat and nobody's going to make fun of you. What I find inspiring about what Nashville did, and really what Texas as a state did, was they kind of leaned into the caricature that historically had been used as a pejorative and turned it into a positive.
It's almost like you see too many places trying to like almost give themselves their own nicknames. Like when you're coming up through high school and you're like, yeah, call me Flash, and then everyone's like, no, I'm gonna call you Sparky. Like, come on, what do you do? And you can't give your own nickname's never gonna stick.
Yeah.
But if you find out what the identity is, and then it's your job as the government, I feel like, to help craft that narrative. And but I do think, and this would be my curiosity to you. Do you think that it is a top-down approach when it comes to this local marketing, where like the state says Nashville is the country music capital of the world and everyone just agrees to that? Or is it more of a bottoms-up approach of like everyone around here was already saying this, that we were already talking about it?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's top-down. And you'd be hard-pressed to find an example of a municipal rebranding project that worked.
Yeah.
It's never worked in Indy. And there's things have worked around the edges. Like I love what, Visit Indy has done with just Indy. We're very fortunate in that our city's name, its natural nickname, the truncation of Indianapolis, Indy, is just a killer name.
Yeah.
I mean, as you know, I have 6 children, only one son. I named him Indy, right?
That's
so
sick.
so I think that's great. So we're ahead of the curve there. But again, if you let's look at Austin with Keep Austin Weird. That was not the Austin Chamber of Commerce that came up with that. All right, much less the state of Texas. No, they're organic. They're bottoms up. It's always individuals that drive this. Now, I do think there are like convening bodies that can get the right people in the room to have a vigorous debate and settle on, hey, where do we want to put resources?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
You want to know what I think Indiana and Indianapolis's biggest problem is when it comes to landing on a name or like this brand or this identity? A large part of it is the entire state of Indiana. If I were to say, Kristian, that's a really nice hat, what would the average Hoosier say?
Thank you.
I got it on sale.
Oh,
it was 95% off.
Yeah.
I picked it up the cheapest shelf at Goodwill.
Yeah.
And it's almost like wrong for us to have nice things. Like I feel like the average Hoosier's identity is built in getting the best discount and talking about it in a way that's like, versus like in LA or Miami or New York, it's like, yeah, the chain was 10 grand and the hat was Gucci and like Prada and all of these things that are just like, it's almost like you're flexing. But in Indiana, it's like, no. So like when I ask, oh yeah, what's your opinion of Brown County, or what? Maybe Brown County is a bad example, but what's your opinion of Andersen? And the average person would say, oh, it's not bad. No one ever drove an hour up north of Indianapolis for not bad. Yeah. No one ever got in the car and did a South Bend road trip or an Evansville road trip for a place that's okay. But that's just the way we talk about our things.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think that's not unique to Indiana. That's probably a middle American kind of Protestant worth ethic-y kind of thing. But I thought you were going to go somewhere else.
Oh, where'd you think I was going to go?
I'll just say movement. And that movement could be a product. That movement could be a brand. Product could be a new religion or non-consensus. If I was going to be critical of how Indianapolis, the city, and Indiana, the state, have handled attempts to rally around a collective identity, my critique would be consensus. Trying to drive to consensus. And this is also why I don't really like to talk about cities in the context of the state. And again, not unique to Indiana. I mean, I grew up in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers, which is kind of the new economic engine of growth in the state, or Little Rock, which is the capital and the historic economic engine of the state. And then you've got all these rural communities that are like, well, what about us? What about us? I don't want to forget about them. But what I do think is very important is if the heart stops beating, there's no point in trying to save the left arm or the eyeball or the ear, okay? The heart needs to, the rest of the body needs the healthiest possible heart, or it's game over for every other system and subsystem in the body. And that's how I think about the relationship between Indy and the balance of the state. Of course, we need to shine a light on other amazing things happening in the state. Of course, we need to do really everything in our power to bolster the economic vitality of South Bend and Franklin and Bloomington and so on and so forth. But all that change happens at the community level. So the folks in Indy can't go fix South Bend's problems. South Bend needs to do that. And they've done it to some extent. And you see the same thing in Fort Wayne. The folks in Fort Wayne aren't sitting around waiting for us to fix whatever is ailing them, okay? But you and I live in Indy.
Yeah.
Okay? This is our hometown. This is our city. And for Indy to move out of the top of the middle of the bell curve, which is where I would argue we are right now, like slightly better than average across all of the most meaningful statistics, bankruptcy rates, net migration, GDP, et cetera, it's going to require some non-consensus ideas. And if we're trying to make everybody happy, if we're trying to make everybody in the city happy, much less everybody in the state happy, you're going to end up with one of my favorite analogies is, have you ever ridden a hybrid mountain bike? You ever heard of this?
Like electric assist?
Not electric.
Oh, no.
A hybrid mountain bike is a bike that's kind of a blend of a traditional mountain bike and a road bike.
Okay.
And the pitch is, hey, you can take it on the trails, but you can drive it to work, and it's good for a Sunday cruise on the Monon. It does it all. Well, guess what? It's a very crappy mountain bike, and it's a very crappy road bike, right?
So you really just sucks at both of them.
It sucks at both of them. It's below average at both of them, okay? And so when you try to hybridize and make everyone happy and drive to some form of uniform consensus, you end up with mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
And cool or like trend setting, any of that is largely not loved by everyone. When it's like, I'm sure there are people in Nashville that freaking hated country music, and we're like,
well, think about this. Think about when, and I don't know all the inner workings and machinations of who was in charge and how Music City got emblazoned on everything, but I guarantee you, when dollars were being put toward that, the people in the healthcare sector were like, what about us? And the people in the manufacturing sector were like, well, hold on a second. We're not just a music city. We're also a restaurant city, or, have to put all of your wood behind one arrow to cut through the noise.
yeah.
Okay? And that's why I find it problematic when we want to lead with Hoosier hospitality. I looked at a lot of potential campaigns to reframe the city around hospitality. I'm like, that's great. It's true. I do believe, like, genetically, we are a hospitable people in central Indiana. I think it's a statement of fact. I think that's also true in Iowa. And heck, Iowa claims the pork tenderloin too, right? It's why I also don't like Indy's food being the pork tenderloin, because there's 6 other states that claim that the pork tenderloin it's got to be singular. It's got to be differentiated. It's got to be something that's defensible that nobody else can lay claim to. And that's what Austin did with weirdness. It's what Vegas did with sin.
Yeah. Yeah, you think the government officials were like, yeah.
It's what
Sin City.
It's what LA did with glamour and entertainment. It's what New York did with finance. It's what DC did with power. Like, there's a singular idea. I mean, I say great cities have a soul, and that soul can be summed up in one word. And if you can't get to that one word, or if you get to that one word, but it's undifferentiated, like hospitality, okay? Because I promise you, the good people of Kansas City think they're very hospitable too, okay?
Yeah.
Then it's not defensible. It's not differentiated. You're not going to win in the marketplace.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I would totally agree. And I think that is the piece where there are so many people are so nice in Indiana, so nice in Indianapolis, where it's like, oh yeah, we are the healthcare, sports, racing, blank, 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 insert your little slice of the pie here. Like, we do all these things. Absolutely. They do all those things in Music City, and they do all those things in Sin City, and they do, like, there's all those.
It's the price of entry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the price of entry. No, you've got to lock onto something that is true and differentiated. And it doesn't need to tell the whole story of everything happening in the city. That's not the point, right? Any product, you need to have, the word priority had no plural instantiation a century ago. Do you understand?
Priorities.
Priorities, that word is a new word.
Ah. So it was is it a priority or is it not? It was yes or no?
So when you bring one of your staff people in on Monday and you're like, what are your priorities for the week? What they should say to you is, I can only have one priority, because that means number one. Now there may be, so Nate, here's my priority.
Yeah.
And here are the other 5 things I know I need to get done as well.
Wow.
But the priority is the thing. So when we think about the identity of Indianapolis, there needs to be a singular identity from which all the other virtuous ideas can flow from.
And so you guys did a whole exercise on this of thinking about if Indianapolis was to go through a rebrand. I would encourage people to go back and listen to Matt Mindrum's episode of the podcast where we talk about, is it time for Indy to maybe refresh the brand a little bit, or to not have priorities have a priority.
Yeah.
And I believe there is a large push for that priority to be on speed.
Yeah.
If you're watching at home, you can see the shirt that Kristian's wearing. Speed City, Indianapolis.
Yeah.
This is a campaign that you're a big voice behind, of claiming and proclaiming that Indianapolis is Speed City.
Yeah.
Give us the pitch. Why Speed City? Why not the amateur sports capital of the world? Why not the women's sports capital of the world? Why not the health care capital of the world, or the hospitality capital of the world?
Great cities have a soul, and those souls tend to be rooted, not tend to be, they are exclusively rooted in something true, typically from the past, right? It might have been the group of people that moved there and founded it, and whatever ideas or values they held dear. It might be because there was an industry that kind of emerged out of the ether and over 100 years became the kind of soul or the heartbeat of the city. And you said, why not X, Y, and Z? None of this is exclusionary. Right now, I think we are the amateur sports capital of the world, and that's awesome. And I think the push of us being kind of the epicenter of women's sports is amazing. And we need to keep doing that, because I do believe that there are many people around the country who identify Indianapolis as a great sports town, great place to host a sporting event. But you know what's interesting? I was in the last couple years, I've been to Iceland, I've been to South Africa, I've been to Peru. When people say, where are you from? I was in France a few months ago, had this interaction with an Uber driver. Where are you from? I'm from a city in the Midwest called Indianapolis, assuming no one's got, it's close to Chicago. You know? It's kind of how you pitch it. And they're like, oh, vroom, vroom.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay? They don't say, oh, you're the amateur sports capital of the world, or you're the epicenter of women's sports. So those are certainly not bolt-ons. They are critically important, I think, to the future of the city. But when you think about identity as distinct from a marketing campaign or a rebrand of a city, which, as I've already shared, I don't believe rebrands of cities work. It just is. And what are you going to uncover and highlight? And for Indianapolis, I think the soul of this city is speed. And yes, it is rooted in motorsports and the very long tradition we have in Indianapolis of burning dead dinosaurs at 235 miles an hour on an oval track. So it did, in fact, start with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But speed as an identity for this city transcends motorsports, right? I mean, I would argue this is the fastest city in America to launch your career. That was certainly true for me. I moved to Indy. I had no family, no friends, didn't know anybody, did not go to an elite university or have any kind of professional pedigree. The roadblocks, the speed bumps, if we want to stick with the kind of a ambulatory metaphor, were almost non-existent. And the ability for me to move quickly, build my network quickly, get into rooms that I had no business being in quickly, I think is unparalleled. And I'm not saying there's no other city in the country that has that, but I think the air is very, very thin up there. And I think our city has a legacy of doing things quickly. Yeah. If you look at the NCAA tournament, the 64-game tournament, executed in a bubble in one city every game, first time it's ever been done, the speed at which that plan was developed and the speed at which it was executed, no other city in the country could have done it. Other cities wanted to do it. They couldn't do it because of speed. Yeah. Okay? And I think the critique of Speed City is, well, it's one-dimensional. It's kind of this it's this like unfashionable association with motorsports, which is kind of a hillbilly thing, and it's simply not true. What is racing? It is glamour, excitement, danger, innovation. It's cosmopolitan. I mean, what is F1? Is F1 provincial? Is F1 hillbilly? No. And what's so funny to me is that any other kind of mid-market city on the planet, if the natural association the rest of the world had with that city was racing, they would be thrilled, right? Like
it's almost like we're not appreciating it. Still scrambling for that last minute gift? Don't worry, we've got something that's fun, festive, and easy to wrap. This holiday, give the gift of instant fun with holiday scratch-offs from the Hoosier Lottery. This holiday season, the Hoosier Lottery is bringing play to every gifting moment with 3 new holiday scratch-offs starting at just $1 and chances to win prizes up to $70,000. And don't forget to take a little play break for yourself with 5 new holiday fast play games starting at just $2 with prizes up to $50,000. As the only lottery named after its people, the Hoosier Lottery believes in the power of play to do more for its players, communities, and the state of Indiana. Hoosier Lottery champions play by inviting, celebrating, rewarding, and encouraging play in ways that make life a little more fun for Hoosiers every day. Even better, every time Hoosiers play Hoosier Lottery games, it helps contribute to the more than $7 billion they've given back to good causes since 1989. Wrap up the fun with holiday scratch-offs from the Hoosier Lottery. Find them at your local retailer and give the gift of play. Must be 18 and older to play. Please gift responsibly. I see where you're coming from in the sense that like people think, oh, it's racing, but go to the Indianapolis 500 and it is a microcosm of the world. The most wealthy elite people are up in the boxes with the suites and the this, and then the common folk are out in turn 3. And it's like everyone has a place there.
Yeah, and it's but I guess my point too is like it's rooted in motorsports historically, but it transcends it in a big way.
Like buying a house, like speed, like you can get to home ownership quickly. You can get even making friends. I would say one of the
That is a great example.
Like you could move to Indiana, you could go to a coffee shop, and if you just had a little bit of courage, like talk to somebody, you will make a friend quickly.
And that's where hospitality, as one of the kind of core values that undergirds speed, comes into play. You know, I think what is also kind of interesting and probably merits spending a couple minutes on is identity. So how do we as citizens think about ourselves and think about our city and ultimately our state? It's not brand. It's something that you kind of feel and own and take pride in, which is why I don't think these things are top-down initiatives. They're very much bottoms up. And a great identity at the individual level and at the municipal level is both an imperative and an indicative. You know, the indicative piece is it's just true. We are Speed City. We move quickly. We solve problems quickly. We bust through roadblocks quickly. But it is also an imperative, which is like, and as such, because you are Speed City, this is how you should behave. This is how the city should operate. This is how you should think about your identity as a citizen. So a city is a business, right? We talked about that. And so the city has to create a product that its citizens, who are customers, want to purchase. And the way a citizen purchases from a city is by living there. Okay? I'm going to make my home here. I'm going to pay taxes here. I'm going to send my kids to the public schools, et cetera. That's the transaction. So a great identity is one that is both indicative, it is true, but it is also an imperative, meaning it is a call to be something and to be more of that thing as time goes on. So, you know, our DMV at Indianapolis, it should be the fastest DMV in America. So whoever's running the DMV, which I assume is appointed by the governor, like they need to internalize Speed City, okay? And say, we're going to have the fastest, most seamless, frictionless license renewal process in the country.
Kevin Garvey, commissioner of the DMV.
There you go. And I think the DMV does a pretty good job. But why do we not have the fastest pothole repair squad in the country? We can and we should.
Yeah.
You know, Indianapolis International Airport at one point had the fastest Wi-Fi of any airport in America. That's living into the value, living into the identity. So it's both a personal individual thing, and it goes all the way up to the state level, this internalization of this is something we value. Mm-hmm. And because we value this, we're going to demote, because you can't have 10 values that you hold equally.
Priorities versus priority.
You got it.
The priority is speed in the kind of, you're going to move here and you're going to find a friend quickly. You're going to find I don't know, maybe it's a job quickly, maybe it's investment into your company quickly, whatever it is, there is momentum and speed behind velocity. Come on.
I love it.
I really like that. And I think that
and we own it.
Yeah.
Nobody else owns it. Nobody else can own it.
It does have to be sexy. If you think in the terms of like something that's going to fire people up and get them excited. Because again, back to my original point, no one ever drove 2 hours for, that's not bad.
Yeah.
No one ever traveled across the country to visit.
You have to make it sexy though, because back to Nashville, just as an example, nobody thought country music was sexy in 1974. I mean, there was a small group of people that I grew up with who did. That's clearly. But
hey,
as a general rule, you know, until I always mark it as when Garth Brooks came out with Friends in Low Places. That was like the pivotal moment, you know, where country started to become cool. But it doesn't need to be, because if sexiness is the priority, you'll look around and look at what is currently considered sexy. Let's go replicate that.
Yeah.
We should build our own Silicon Valley, or, you know, cool. If you're chasing cool, you're always on the wrong side of cool.
Yeah, versus making cool.
Okay, you're always on the wrong side if you're chasing it. Even if the core identity of speed doesn't feel sexy to you today, well, let's make it sexy. You know, and that's the key.
Yeah, like I put this out there, and I know that F1 probably won't come back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but like that should be like at the top. How do we get some sort of Indianapolis Grand Prix? Or like if we want to, like if we would have been building towards this,
we would call it the Speed City Grand Prix.
The Speed City Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And
the headline writes itself.
Yeah, and if we would have been building this, we would have caught the wave of Drive to Survive and like been all the way in it. Like just like country music is hot right now, you know, Post Malone and Beyonce are doing their country albums, and it's crazy. It's awesome. I love country music. I've thought it's been sexy since Kenny Chesney said it. Tractors were sexy back in 1999. But if we owned that and leaned into that, and it's like right as Drive to Survive was peaking, then F1 was coming to Indy. It would have been, it could be sick. And it's still, there's still motion and work to be put in there.
For sure. I mean, getting a North American F1 Grand Prix in Indy would be very cool. I want to be clear that the moniker and the identity Speed City, it transcends motorsports. So getting F1, that'd be great. I think today it's kind of a fool's bargain for cities to pay for that. It's an extortionist racket, you know, and maybe the economics of that get recalibrated, or maybe at some point it makes sense for us to pay for that. And it's been here before, you know.
Yeah.
But I think that as a city, there are a lot of ways that we need to activate that idea, and it starts with like the individual internalization of the citizens of the city embracing that they live in Speed City, the fastest city in the world.
Here's an idea. The wheels are turning.
Let's go.
Matt, team at Indy Chamber. Leonard, team at Visit Indy. What if once a month we went out and found something, whether it's the BMV or pothole filling or whatever, found something that across the country Indianapolis was the fastest at, and documented that process.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Indianapolis, fastest Chick-fil-A drive-through.
It's
fastest,
a great idea.
And you just document. Like I did the time. I showed up for a flight and timed the whole thing. I showed up 45 minutes before not before the boarding started, before the gate closed.
Yep.
And I made it from parking in the economy lot into my chair on the flight in like 37 minutes.
Yeah.
And I timed the whole thing, and it was like, wow. And it crushed. It got like hundreds of thousands of views. People were like, the anxiety
That's awesome.
that it gave people to like, you only showed up 45 minutes before your flight left. Like, that's crazy. But I rolled the dice on it.
Yeah.
But if once a month, someone somewhere was going out and documenting something that was fast in Indiana. Yeah. Like, did you know the average person moves here and has their first invite to a social event within 7 days? And it's not planned. It's not like Nate is specifically inviting this person. It's just like it happens.
Or what are the things that should be fast that aren't, and let's go fix
those. Oh my gosh, I love it.
Because that's really when you begin to internalize the product piece of identity, which is this is good. It should be great. Yeah. It can be great.
Yeah. And in talking about ways to make things better, fix things, if every resident of Indianapolis could do one thing to make our city better, what would that be?
Embrace a shared sense of identity.
Embrace a shared sense of identity.
And become an evangelist. You know, one of my favorite towns in America is Greenville, South Carolina. And I have a lot of good friends that live there, and one thing that I'm always struck by when I visit is they're always trying to connect me with their realtor. They're like, "Dude, why don't you live here? You should move here." And by the way, this is not unique to me. I've had this Greenville conversation with lots of people. The citizens of Greenville love it, are proud of it, and are relentless evangelists for it. You know, so that comment I made at the kind of top of our conversation, which is, it really frustrates me when people are like, hold on, why did you come to Indy for spring break? Like this shock that someone would elect to spend time here. That needs to be stricken from our lexicon. You know, if you walk down the street and you interviewed 100 people and said, is Indy amazing or does Indy suck? You would probably get a 50-50 split. But here's something that's very interesting. Of the 50 that said, yeah, it's average, sucks is too strong a word, but maybe unenthusiastic response to the question, a disproportionate percentage of those folks were born and raised in Indianapolis. Of the 50 that were like, it's amazing, a disproportionate percentage of them came here from somewhere else. And so it's just kind of missing the forest for the trees a lot. The biggest evangelists I know for this city aren't from here.
It's crazy. Leonard Hoops, he is running Visit Indy. He is not from Indianapolis.
No, because they've got the comparative context to understand this place is amazing. And you know, it's if you grow up in wealth and affluence, you just don't appreciate it.
The value of a dollar doesn't matter as much.
But if you grow up impoverished and then have a successful career or win the lottery, maybe lottery is not a good example, but going from having not to having makes having so much more special. And so my admonition or challenge to the citizens of Indianapolis would be to discover your sense of gratitude for what a remarkable community and how excellent this city is, and to take up the mantle of evangelism, because that's not only how you change other people's minds, it's how you change your mind. You know what I mean? You have to. That's why gratitude exercises work. It literally changes your brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is not saying like we just act like everything is perfect in Indianapolis. Like we totally realize there's still more work to do, but it starts with coming from a place of gratitude of like, wow, there is so much good here and the people are great. And if you just like change and this isn't just Indianapolis, this is any community across Indiana. When we talk about this bottoms up approach, if you just change the way you speak about your home, and yes, there are still more things to do. Yes, there's more work to do. But if you can lead with the gratitude and lead with the appreciation, you'll change your community. Yeah. Like, you know, a place that does this really well that is crazy. I've spent time down in Du Bois County. I rave about them all the time. Jasper, that area. Yeah. Jasper, Ferdinand, Huntingburg. Anyone, even if they don't live there anymore, they just talk about home with such reverence. Yeah. The way they speak about home, if they're not from there, they can't wait to get back there. If they moved to Indianapolis for a job, they cannot wait to go back to the Schnitzelbank and have some salad bar at the German restaurant in town. Yeah. And it just like fires me up. So when I step foot in that community, I'm just like, yes, there are still problems. Yes, there are still challenges. Yes, there's still changes that need to be made. But they lead with like, yeah, this place is really cool. Just wait till you try this.
You know what might even be a better admonition than cultivating a sense of gratitude? Yeah. It's because what you just reflected is they're expressing their affection for those places.
Love your city.
They're expressing their affection, and that's... Great cities are populated by people who have a strong affection. Are they perfect? Of course not. Great cities, by the way, are not easy places to live. Tokyo, London, New York, those are not easy places to live. There's a lot of friction there. But the affection is so profound and so strong and so contagious.
Yeah.
That's what fuels their greatness.
Well, and think about all of the things within your life. Like when things are easy, you don't take an appreciation for them. You don't have that love. But when there is that little bit of friction and that little bit of, it just like creates, it's like the girl at school, you know, like the one that loved you, you didn't love her to start. You like wanted to chase after a little bit and run it down. Okay. So that's what local, each resident of Indianapolis or of any community, if you want to help improve your local home, have more love for your city.
Cultivate your affection.
Now, from like a overarching higher level, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the city or the state, what would that be?
I would, if I could wave a magic wand and recalibrate people's expectations, ambition, and affection for the city, recognizing what they have, and being a champion and evangelist for what they have. That's what I would do. Because again, I'm tempted to talk about some state level mandate or some shift in local politics, but that won't get you anywhere. Mm-hmm. That won't get you anywhere. The people who choose to live here, that is the beginning and the end of what will continue to transform the city and their affection for the city and their shared sense of identity. So that's probably an unsatisfying answer, but
it's good.
It's the same answer.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap up. We have a few more like rapid fire questions left, but I have one more question that kind of like ties a point of expressing this. So are there ways throughout your time in Indy that's been almost 30 years?
Yeah.
1997 to now 2025?
Yeah, I mean, there were some detours in the middle of that. I moved my family back to Arkansas for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
In the middle of that, and would commute. I lived in Conway, Arkansas, and I would commute from Conway to Indianapolis every other week, and I did that for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I came home one night after being delayed like 6 hours in Atlanta. It's like 3 a.m. I'm driving home on the interstate. My home was about 45 minutes from the airport in Little Rock, and I'm listening to this Texas country singer named Pat Green. He's got a song called While I Was Away, real sappy song about while he's on the road, missing his children growing up.
Yeah.
And I just, my daughter would say I had a minty bee.
A little minty bee.
I had a minty bee and was just like crying. Like, what am I doing? And I came home that night and I woke my wife, Brandy, up, and I was like, we need to move back to Indianapolis. Like this me being gone half the time is not working. And she was like, I agree. And she sold our home 2 weeks later. And
you came back home.
We came back home. That's a good way of putting it.
So I guess, not your home. Left your home to come back home, right?
I left home to come back home.
Yeah. So over 20 years then in Indianapolis.
Yeah, but 30 in aggregate.
Is there a specific way that this state or this city showed up big for you, for your companies, for the investments that you've made, that just really ties a bow on everything that you're talking about and that inspires you with so much gratitude? You're not from here. You weren't born here. You don't owe this city anything. Or maybe you feel like you do. But like, why do you have so much affection and gratitude for Indianapolis?
You know, I got interviewed a couple of years ago, and one of the questions was, why do you love Indianapolis so much? And I said, because Indy loved me first. Oh. And that, I'm going to stick with that response, just meaning no one owed me anything. Again, little to no pedigree, connections. Nobody was doing my daddy a favor because they didn't know who he was. There was something, and you said this, Indy, we have plenty of flaws, plenty of things we need to work out on because this city is comprised of humans who are fundamentally imperfect. Yeah. In light of those many flaws, I would say this is an incredible meritocracy, this city. They're less concerned with where you went to college and what your last name is, and more about what are you capable of and what are you willing to give for the city. And, you know, in the context of High Alpha, what did the city do for us? I would just say we felt cheered on every step of the way. We've felt very few people out there trying to kind of tear you down or shoot holes in what you're doing. For the most part, like at a shockingly high level, the support we've gotten from individuals, sometimes competitors, has just been remarkable. People want to see people win in this city.
Legitimately. That's so true. I will resonate, and I will second the fact that you can move here. Your dad didn't have to play golf with the mayor. Yeah. You don't have to be a 5th generation legacy. But if you are, even better, that's cool. We like that. Yeah. But you could be a 1st generation Hoosier and come here and get plugged in if you are driven by impact. Yeah. I was a 2019 college graduate, moved here from a small town in northern Indiana, went to DePauw, ended up here, part of the Orr Fellowship program, and it's been off to the races. And I've just gotten deeper and deeper ingrained at every step. And now I get to host a podcast that helps promote the city and the state. And it's
it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's 6 years ago, I was just figuring it out. I had no idea what, I just knew that I wanted to make an impact in our local community. It's crazy. It is a place that is driven. If you want to make an impact, you can come here and make an impact. Yeah,
and here's the thing. And I know we got to wrap, but that's true for other communities. You can go to Topeka, Kansas, and make an impact. But the distinction is Indianapolis is operating, I usually think of it, we don't have a whiteboard here, but I think of it as 2 orbs. One is opportunity and the other is access. And if you think about the Bay Area, there's all the opportunity in the world. Capital, talent, infrastructure, research universities, oceans and airports and operas, and it's got all the inputs. But your ability to access that is really quite limited. So huge opportunity orb, small access orb, and they barely overlap. Conversely, you could go to some small town in Mississippi, and you could have all the access you want. You could have lunch with the mayor every Tuesday, okay? But the raw inputs are de minimis, right? There's just not that much opportunity. What is, if not wholly unique, quite rare that Indianapolis possesses is we're a city that's operating at scale. Depending on if you want to use metros and MSAs, a couple million people running around here, okay? With big city infrastructure, big city corporations. And your ability to tap into that, to access that, is extraordinary. If you wanted to get an audience with the mayor of Indianapolis or the governor of our state in a week, you could do it.
If your ask is right and it made sense and all that stuff, absolutely. Someone who has the person's ear. Someone would make that introduction.
Everyone will work with you to get you access.
Where I feel like in some places it's laughable. Yeah.
Of course.
No one would laugh you out of the room if I said, hey, I want to have the mayor on, and I really put some work in to getting the connection.
There's no question. So that's, to me, that's the Venn diagram of what makes Indy really special is a city operating at scale that you can still interact with like it's a much smaller city.
Wow. I love that. We're going to tie a bow on the Indy love. All right, so this question is brought to you by our friends at JC Hart. They're a leader in creating enjoyable living experiences at apartment communities all across Indiana and beyond. Check them out at home.jchart.com. My question for you, Kristian, could be back in Arkansas, could be in the Bay Area, could be all over. We've talked a lot about Indianapolis. We've talked about what we need to do to make it better. But why do you call Indiana home?
I'm obsessed with impact, and I'm obsessed with the idea of arbitrage. If you think about that in a financial sense, it's basically when the gap between the buy and the sell is pretty wide.
Yeah.
And I think Indianapolis offers the largest arbitrage opportunity of any mid-size or large city in the country in terms of what you can accomplish. I mentioned earlier why Indy, because Indy loved me, Indy loved me first. The maybe second part of that is relative to the scale the city's operating at. If you are a ambitious, hardworking person, you can put a bigger dent in the universe in Indy than almost any other city in the country.
Absolutely. At a fast speed, very quickly.
Very quickly.
I love it. Okay, we've come to the end of the show. We have a few questions left for you. First off, I have to ask, have you thought about running for public office?
No.
No? Not in the cards?
I'm unelectable.
Unelectable. Yeah. What makes you unelectable?
I just probably because I just wouldn't want the job.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Because I feel like that's an interesting place where Indianapolis has a lot of very people leading the charge that from like the private side. They're like, hey, I don't want to be in the government office, but I want to help in any way I can. Like, because it'd be so easy for you to just do high alpha things and, like, continue making investments and being in tech. But the fact that you have taken this vested interest in the community is like the most Indianapolis
I think
thing
I can have a much larger impact shaping the perception and the identity of the city than I could at a
from the inside
city council meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Who's an Indiana entrepreneur that you admire and why?
Matt Mindrum.
Oh.
Yeah. So Matt, who's had a very storied career at Lilly and Butler and IMS, who's now leading the Indy Chamber, he's the right man for the job.
Yeah.
And it's been so fun getting to know him and uncovering his deep and abiding love for this city and his ability to herd cats, which is not a superpower that I possess. I think what he's doing on behalf of the city of Indianapolis is pure entrepreneurship, and I have a great deal of admiration for him.
I love that. Yeah. Go back and listen to his episode on the show. He's spectacular and does bring a very privatized marketing brain to a chamber of commerce, which is like, I don't think largely regarded as the most entrepreneurial or fun and creative.
No, but
industry.
he's reinventing how those organizations have impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, these are the same 3 questions that we ask everyone who comes on the show. The first one, you've kind of hit on it. This whole episode has kind of been a lot about Indianapolis, but you've traveled around, been to different places. You talked about France, Tokyo, London, all over. What's something that the world needs to know about Indiana?
A friend of mine, his name is Greg Enos.
Yes.
And has he been on the pod?
He has not been on the pod.
Okay. And he and his best friend, Don Palmer, run Citizen 7.
Yeah.
Greg shared with me a few weeks ago that his goal for Indianapolis is to make it the joy capital of the world. And I was like, Greg, we're almost there. We're almost there. This is and the work they're doing at Citizen 7, just starting with helping people build friendships, helping young men, old men, and it is that organization is focused, I think, predominantly on kind of men for what it's worth. But their remit, their mandate to make Indy the joy capital of the world, I think is so beautiful, so winsome. Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that that's one of the ambitions for our city.
There's someone out there who had a storied career at Lilly, has been doing a lot. Like Greg is a great dude, and he's just out there. Like, he's not looking for the city to give him approval to make this the joy capital, or he's like, nah, we're just going to spread joy.
Bottoms up.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, this is your opportunity to share a part of the state that more people need to know about. What is a hidden gem in Indiana?
Thought about this kind of deeply. There is an organization in Indy. It's located in Rocky Ripple, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, yeah. 2 roads in, 2 roads out.
Called White Pine Wilderness Academy. And it was founded by a guy named Matt Scholl. And it is, I believe, one of the most remarkable institutions in our state. And they work with young children, teenagers, and adults to solve nature deficit disorder. So it's a primitive skills academy where you learn how to forage, identify edible plants, build your own bow, process wild game, and it's actually a national model. They've been studied by people from all over North America, and it is located on like a half-acre plot of land in urban Indianapolis in Rocky Ripple, and I think it is one of the most remarkable, unknown institutions in our city.
That's incredible. The fact that Rocky Ripple has a wilderness academy just like checks out.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you cross those, I think there's 2 bridges in. And like, so one of our running loops, we go back the Rocky Ripple loop and we go through back there and there's like the Rocky Ripple town hall over there. Yeah. And I'm just like, this place just has something going on. Like there's just some grit to Rocky Ripple.
I would put White Pines. There's actually another organization I'm just now becoming familiar with called Camptown.
Yeah.
That is taking a lot of those other basic precepts and making it available to really kind of challenged and disadvantaged youth. But this idea that we have a handful of entrepreneurs in the city that are working really, really hard to make nature a classroom. The way White Pants talks about it is they say nature's our classroom and our curriculum's thousands of years old, right?
Wow.
And it's really beautiful, and they're changing people's lives.
That's awesome. I love that. Right in the middle of Indianapolis. Final question for you as we wrap it out. You've talked about Matt Mindrum. You talked about Greg Enos. We're going to give one more shout out to someone across the state that this is how we source new guests or learn about people who are just doing massive things across our state. Who's a Hoosier we need to keep on our radar? Someone who's doing big things.
Greg Enos.
Heck yeah. Yep. We're gonna double down on Greg.
Greg Enos and Don Palmer. You got to have them both.
Okay.
Because these are two guys, older dudes who could very well be spending time at their beach house in South Florida or spending time on the links, who get out of bed every day focused on making Indianapolis the joy capital of the world. And I think it's just amazing. Yeah,
I love that. Kristian, this has been incredible. It was great to learn about your journey from New York to Arkansas to Indianapolis, back to Arkansas, back to Indiana, learning about what, when you got here, the differences, the similarities between not only Indiana and Arkansas, as well as Nashville, Austin, some of these other big metros, hearing your passion for the state, your passion specifically for the city, Speed City, is incredible. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go out there.
Let's go.
If all of us remember one thing from this podcast, one thing, the change starts if you love your home. Yeah. Whether it's Columbus, Indiana, whether it's Bloomington, Indianapolis, Evansville, South Bend, the way you talk, the way you speak, and the way you love your city is what's going to make the largest impact across our state. Branding, whether it's Speed City, whether it's women's sports, whether it's amateur sports, whether it could be anything. A top-down approach, that's not going to be the thing that helps take Indianapolis to the next level. Yeah. It's going to be every single Hoosier holding a love for our place in our hearts. And I could not say it better myself. It was incredible. Beautiful. Thank you for joining me. It's incredible. And I'm sure we'll talk soon as time keeps rolling on.
Can't wait. Thanks for having me.
This show is made possible by our friends up at Sweetwater. Whether you're looking to start a podcast or take your content to the next level, click the link in the description to see all my gear recommendations at Sweetwater. If you want a behind-the-scenes look at everything we're doing across the state, make sure you follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Nate Spangle. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of what makes the Hoosier State great. We'll see you next time here on Get In.